The honourable member for Halifax, Chebucto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me the great honour to reply to the speech from the throne. Before I start, I would like to recognize that we are on unceded Mi'kmaq land. Every time I step in this legislature, I'm reminded of the history that this place and how the decisions of those that came before us have helped define and shape who we are as a province. Mr. Speaker, this is a great privilege to represent the constituents of Halifax Chebucto. Halifax Chebucto is so important to me because I was born and raised in this constituency. I'm first-generation Canadian. My family immigrated from the Netherlands and chose Halifax Chebucto to set down my roots. Not only is this the only home I have known, it represents so much more. It is part of Canada my family chose, and the part of Canada that welcomed us with open arms. My father was a professor at Dalhousie University in the Department of Physics. Teaching was his true passion in life. Because of my father and his passion for education, he led the charge to start the Discovery Centre. For me, that meant spending some summers touring science centres across Canada. That wasn't exactly my cup of tea. In hindsight, I see the success of the Discovery Centre and the role that it has played in shaping young minds. And I am proud of my father's role in making his dream a reality for so many children. At the time, as a young boy with attention deficit disorder, or ADD, as it's commonly known, I wasn't as patient, and I want to thank my father for his efforts and commitment. I didn't make that project any easier. That's for sure. Then there's my amazing mom, who has touched so many lives in Nova Scotia. As a child life specialist on the oncology unit at the IWK, she worked with families in helping them go through their treatments or preparing the family for the passing of their child. Still today, she can be anywhere in Nova Scotia, and someone will walk up to my mom and give her a big hug and break down in tears. And when I see this, I know how my mom has touched many families in Nova Scotia, and she continues to make a difference in the lives of children throughout her volunteer work with Speedy Kids on the Oval and Brigadoon. I'm talking about my parents to emphasize that their value in the community that welcomed them to Canada, and they gave back and continue to do so. They taught me the importance of community, and I would like to think I do as much as I can to live up to that example, not only as an MLA, but also as a small business owner, volunteer, a founder of Brigadoon, and as a member of the team that made the Oval permanent structure in Halifax. I often hear people talking about the differences from one electoral district to the next. People say that rural districts are tight-knit communities and that Halifax districts are different, but that's not the Halifax Chebucto I know. I see thriving communities and people working together to make their community a better place to live for their families and their neighbors. When my parents settled on Halifax as our new home, I was 2 years old. We moved to Vernon Street, and I have lived in Halifax Chebucto ever since. This is where I biked around and played with my friends. This is where I got my first job at O'Brien's Pharmacy, delivering prescriptions to seniors on my skateboard. We moved from Vernon Street, but still remained in Chebucto. I attended Lamarchand St. Thomas, the same school my kids attend today. I moved on to what is known as Halifax Central Junior High School and then Queen Elizabeth High School. I remained in Halifax Chebucto while studying at St. Mary's University, and after graduation, I got married, started a family, and my business here. Far too many Nova Scotians feel the need to move on, to take their experience and passions and abilities to distinct destinations west or around the world. I am fortunate to have been able to stay and make my life here. I work very hard every day to ensure that more young people can live, work, and grow our communities. And I am proud of where I live, and I see the potential to do more, to be truly great. Thanks to the province's commitment to education, Halifax Chebucto will soon be the home of a new school. Because of our commitment to preparing our children for the future and our youth action plan, these kids will be better equipped to stay here in Nova Scotia and use their skills and energy to contribute to our communities. I've spent my entire life in Halifax, Chebucto, and I've spent the last 3 years learning from and working hard on behalf of my constituents. I have heard from my constituents from all walks of life. I have grown personally as I have spoken to more and more members of my community. I have witnessed struggles that I was not previously aware of. I have seen the determination and drive of my neighbors, and I'm humbled and more committed than ever to make life here better for every single resident. During my time as MLA, I've seen decisions made by our government that impact my constituents. Many stories are positive and some are tough. One such decision was change made to the film tax credit. I understand the rationale for the decision and I see the success we're enjoying today, but it was a difficult process. I had a connection to the industry through my family's involvement, my personal contact, and those of many of my constituents, and I was determined to be constructive and help engage people in meaning dialogue. Mr. Speaker, when change was announced, I made sure I was available to my constituents. I opened the door of my office and listened. I heard from the industry professionals who feared for their futures. I worked tirelessly with Screen Nova Scotia and served a strong voice for the industry, Mr. Speaker. This work has been done and acknowledged by the film industry in this province. When government and industry got together and began a productive dialogue, we saw changes and restore hope for many. Could we have avoided upset and uncertainty? Yes. And in the end, we listened, and I am so pleased to see the industry celebrating a great year. I'm happy to see new TV and film productions, and I'm proud of the role I played in this, and I'm proud of our film industry's professionals. And I am pleased that the government was able to adapt and listen. Former Finance Minister, MLA for Halifax Fairview, Graham Steele, once said in a CBC column that MLAs will always say they're working on an issue, and he advised constituents to ask their MLAs to prove it. Here's my proof. Former chair of Screen Nova Scotia and respected member of the film community, Mark Allman, had to say about my efforts. I want to thank you for your efforts to reach out and meet me over the last year. You've been very encouraging of dialogue between government and myself and my colleagues at Screen Nova Scotia, and I appreciate the insights you provided. The recent announcement regarding the $1.5 million increase in the fund in 2016-17 and the $5.9 million for 2017 and 18 were important steps forward. To many insiders and outsiders this province, it is a clear signal that government supports the regrowth of the industry and wishes to make the new Film Production Incentive Fund work. The industry appears to be getting back on its feet and will continued support from the fund. That trend will continue. For me, it didn't end there, and I continued to work with Rob Power and Mark Allman and others in the film industry to ensure that the industry can thrive here in Nova Scotia. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to now acknowledge the recent municipal elections and congratulate those elected to serve the residents of Halifax, Chebucto. On Halifax City Council, District 7 will again represented by Wei Mason. The residents of District 8 have elected Lindell Smith, the first African Nova Scotia City Councillor to serve in 16 years for District 9. And District 9 is now represented by Sean Cleary. Lindell Smith and Sean Cleary have committed to continuing the participatory budget process first introduced by Halifax by Wei Mason upon his election in 2012. This is an amazing effort, and I commend Councillor Mason for introducing it to our city. And I've watched it closely in both District 7 and 8, and I look forward to seeing it in action in District 9. MLAs do not have a discretionary fund to engage constituents this way. But the whole project got me thinking about how could I engage constituents in a similar manner. Together with some volunteers from the community, I developed the Democracy in Action Plan. To my knowledge, it has never been done in Canada at either federal nor provincial levels. The idea was a community-developed private members' bill, or as we'll call it, a community members' bill. I hosted 2 sessions for residents of Halifax-Chebucto where anyone could bring forward ideas for legislation to improve our community or the province as a whole. We explained not all issues or ideas would fit within the scope of a private member's bill and worked together to develop the ideas that could. Working through this project behind the scenes has proven interesting as well. We hope to proceed with policy changes that represent the ideas that were presented, and that I'm proud of that. I will continue to engage residents and work towards building a better democracy for Halifax-Chebucto. The ideas that came forward were nonpartisan, Mr. Speaker. We had people in attendance who vote for different parties. The ideas brought forward covered everything from electoral reform to changes to the Motor Vehicle Act. There were ideas that would benefit families, the environment, creative communities, and the poor. And I'm currently working with government to advance one of these ideas when the time comes. And at that time, I will ask the House to do as Halifax-Chebucto community did, to come together and endorse a good community idea. And I look forward to that discussion. While on the subject of partisanship, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to talk about women in politics. I'd like to thank former MP for Halifax, Megan Leslie, for her work on behalf of women in politics. Ms. Leslie has appeared on national coverage talking about sexism in politics and how women are treated differently as men. We don't face commentary on our clothing or appearances, but elected women hear it all too often. I, Mr. Speaker, have spoken in the House about women's equality. I am a supporter of the United Nations He for She campaign, which calls on men to join the movement for women's equality. Right here in Canada, we have a long way to go. Women earn less than men while doing the same job. There are jobs that pay less simply because women are most likely to be employed in those jobs. The Nova Scotia House of Assembly includes 15 women representing constituents. Less than a third of the seats in this House are occupied by women. Thanks, DPR. Even while half of Nova Scotians are women, we can do better in our effort to elect more women. It is much about making sure women want to do and aspire to run. As it is about filling the seats with balance, there are barriers, Mr. Speakers. Those barriers start with the playing field that is not level. Until the women in this House are treated with the same respect and consideration as men, fewer women will step up and take the job. This is not a partisan issue, Mr. Speaker. It's up to all of us from all parties to ensure the equality of women is promoted through all of our actions. And a good starting point, Mr. Speaker, would be for the third party to refrain from using unflattering photos of government MLAs attached to disingenuous graphics for distribution on social media. How can the member of Halifax Needham and Truro Bible Hill, Millbrook Salmon River sit idly while their party distributes these graphics? How can they support a leader and a party who engages in this kind of partisan political attack? I am proud of the leadership shown by the Premier on this issue. Our party, under his leadership, has increased the number of women in government benches. Mr. Speaker, the majority of senior leadership team in the government is made up of women. This is real progress. Mr. Speaker, I would like now to take a moment to address a topic that affects not only me, but that is prevalent in daily lives of many adults and children in our school system. The topic I'd like to address in my diagnosis of attention deficit disorder and dyslexia, a term used for categorizing difficulty in learning to read. This meant that word, letter, symbol, recognition, and interpreting words become an enormous challenge, like the one I just read. At this point in my life, I can now call that this is a gift. This has been a long, difficult road with a pivotal point of being when a university professor at St. Mary's University called me stupid in front of my peers. To this day, I have never forgotten how that made me feel. My effort to understand why or how this could happen led to a year-long struggle, which resulted in this person no longer teaching in the university. This unfortunate incident led me to advocate for those kids with non-visual disabilities like my own. I became the chairman of the board for the Learning Disabilities Association of Nova Scotia. As an executive member of LDANS, I worked toward the global and every child with non-visual learning disabilities be acknowledged for the person they are and the many outstanding qualities and abilities that they possess. It is important to keep in mind that even 10 years ago, a non-visual learning disability might have been associated accordingly with mental illness. I am pleased to say that our teachers today have the skills and the strategies to identify children with learning disabilities to program for their success. Mr. Speaker, Halifax Chebucto had previously been represented by a member from the opposition benches during that for 13 years in effect. And even when the member in government, there were calls for a new school to be replaced, the aging Lamarchant St. Thomas. Between 2009 and 2013, with government MLA in Halifax Chebucto, we saw $65 million cut from education. And Lamarchant St. Thomas was left to continue aging. And I am pleased to say that our government is reinvesting this $65 million back into our schools and our classrooms. Lamarchant St. Thomas will be replaced next year, and I could be more proud of the work that we've done to bring this to fruition. All members of the House are talking about working conditions for our teachers. We understand that teachers' working conditions are our children's learning conditions. For my community, this includes a much-needed school for students and teachers, a school that replaces infrastructure put in place almost a century ago. Mr. Speaker, this is also an opportunity to come back to some of what I've learned while serving my community. I mentioned the need for consultation and how when government and members of the film community started to produce dialogue, things began to turn around. I've also mentioned that I've learned so much by maintaining open channels of communication with my constituents. I've learned that my opinions are shaped by my experiences, but that there are many different experiences shared and lived by many different people. Replacing Lamarchant St. Thomas is a major project. Changes to the site impact the school's neighbors. Members of the community reached out with concerns based on some initial designs and ideas, and I made sure to keep in touch with the municipal councillor, Wayne Mason. I reached out to those who contacted me, and I hand-delivered invitations to each of the neighbors, inviting them to share their concerns at a meeting with representatives from the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal. We worked hard. We made sure our constituents were heard. The result, Mr. Speaker? The result is a new school that will be simply spectacular. A new school that fits into the community. A new school to answer calls that have been ignored for over a decade. A new school to prepare our children for the future, for our future. And I'm proud of the role I played in that project, and I'm proud of my community. And I'm proud of those living around the new school are my neighbors. I am happy that we could work together to make compromises and to assure that first and foremost, the children are better off thanks to this project. Mr. Speaker, I'd be remiss to exclude some acknowledgements at this point. I want to extend a thanks to the School Steering Committee at Lamarchant St. Thomas for their tireless efforts in helping shape a new school. Also, thanks to staff from A49 for their hard work and especially for listening to the community and working to ensure those voices were heard. For the next while, the teachers and students will be working and learning in tight quarters, and thank you for your patience as we move this project forward. Thank you for your commitment to education and our children. I want to thank Wei Mason for his efforts for lobbying and ensuring that this would be a full-size gymnasium to the new school. Mr. Speaker, I am fortunate to have a wonderful connection to education in Nova Scotia. I have 2 children in our education system, and I've had the great privilege to interact every day with many amazing teachers. I have been able to see some of the new curriculum and how it is working. And as a parent, I see the enthusiasm and the excitement from learning from my children display. My children and many others in Nova Scotia are learning about coding and the digital world in which we live. And I will never forget the day one of my kids came home and showed me how to move a droid R2-D2 from Star Wars around the computer screen. She was so excited, and we had a blast, and she was teaching me how to code. This kind of programming in our classroom is preparing our kids for the now and for the future. And by the year 2020, there will be an expected shortage of 1 million people in the field of cybersecurity. And again, I wish to point out how we are moving forward to prepare our kids for the future. As I mentioned previously, our government has reinvested the $65 million into education. With this investment, we are looking for our future for our kids. We have capped elementary class sizes, and I can tell you, it has made a big difference in the classrooms for my children. We have hired hundreds of new teachers and educators, and this shows the start of our commitment to the classroom. I know that the classroom can be difficult for teachers and parents, and especially children. I know there are a lot of pressures for teachers to deliver individual programs, IPPs, for children. They do the best with what they have, and they change the lives of our kids. I am sure there will be a teacher who has made a lasting impression on all of our lives. And for me, they were Miss Mosier and Miss Brown. I know that there are many things that need to change, but change does not happen overnight. That is why, under the leadership of the Minister of Education, we are working to address the needs of the workplace for teachers. We want our teachers to work in an environment where our kids can excel and where teachers can excel in their jobs, and we have a real opportunity to shape and change Nova Scotia schools. As a parent, I am excited for the opportunities of our province to provide our children, and I know our kids will one day excel on the world stage. Speaking of the world stage, Mr. Speaker, I now would like to talk about something that I have become very passionate about during my time as an elected official, and that is the ocean science sector. This sector came to my attention in my very first Economic Development Committee meeting, and I attended. And as I listened, I was truly surprised by the economic impact this sector has in Nova Scotia. I also was surprised by how this sector touched so many communities across this province. And as a maritime province, it only makes sense that the ocean sector will be a pillar of the Nova Scotia economy. So let's talk about Cove, Mr. Speaker. With the Centre for Ocean and for the Centre for Ocean Ventures and Entrepreneurship. When I learned about Cove, it became very clear that Nova Scotia would be a leader on our world stage, and it is an important sector. As I spoke to my colleagues about this, they also became excited about the potential of Cove. One conversation that I will never forget, Mr. Speaker, was with the late Alan Rowe. As we stood in his office looking at the old Coast Guard station, and we shared stories of his time on the Ocean Ranger, he talked about how that experience shaped him and his view on the importance of the ocean. And I know he would be smiling from above to know that this government is involved in this very important venture. The combined funding announced of $19.7 million for Cove takes this venture from dream to reality. My friends, this is how we work with our federal partners to grow a sector. Not only will this support the 480 PhDs that work in this sector from our world-class post-secondary institutions, but it will also create countless jobs for skilled laborers in this construction and in the state-of-the-art facility. To add to the icing of the cake, the federal government and John Risley invested $220 million in paving the way for the Ocean Frontier Institute. Again, this shows how government and the private sector can work together to create new opportunities for Nova Scotia. The success of the ocean science sector will benefit future Nova Scotians for many years to come, and a place that Nova Scotia on the map as a world leader in ocean technology. Mr. Speaker, we live in a spectacular province. I can tell you over the last 3 years, I have spent a great deal of time exploring this province with my family. We have camped, hiked, kayaked, and enjoyed stand-up paddleboarding, among other fun outdoor activities of some of our province's signature vacation spots. I am always proud to share how amazing Nova Scotia is to explore. You can still go on a hike or a kayaking trip and not see anyone for a couple days. We are lucky, and I encourage my fellow members of this House to go explore all that Nova Scotia has to offer. We can see all of our social media networks to celebrate and grow our province. We should be encouraging tourism through all channels: car, train, bus, plane, and yes, the ferry. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I believe our government has been doing an excellent job on this front. This year, Nova Scotia has been the most successful year in tourism in over a decade. With that, I want to share how I personally helped get tourists to Nova Scotia. As I believe, sorry, I lost my track with all the noise. With that, I want to share how I personally helped get tourists to come to Nova Scotia. As I believe we all have a responsibility to get our people here to visit our province. With an amazing group of people, I worked hard to promote our event called Not Since Moses. This event happens every year in the Minister of Education's riding. This is one of the biggest events the Fundy Shore has, and I am proud to say that I have played a big role in building this event over the last 8 years. This year, we will had almost 1,000 runners who started in Soli Cove and ran to Five Islands. And as they ran along the ocean floor, the runners saw some of the most spectacular views, in my opinion. Nowhere else in the world can you run a race on the ocean floor with friends and people from around the world. This year, we had runners from Australia, New Zealand, Africa, Japan, and every province in Canada who was represented, along with most of the Eastern Seaboard. We also had a film crew from France join us this year, who shot a documentary on the Fundy shoreline to highlight the race for their French audience. And I am sure next year we will have many runners from France to run this amazing race. And I'd like to acknowledge and thank the many fellow organizers of Not Since Moses, Terry, Joy, and Carol, and the community of Five Islands and Economy. This event could not happen without your dedication. This is just one example of Nova Scotians who are stepping up to make their communities a destination to visit. There are people like this across our province, so take a moment to thank them for making our communities a destination that people are excited to visit. Mr. Speaker, I would like now to turn my attention to a topic I am also very passionate about: small business in Nova Scotia. First, I need to commend every small business owner in Nova Scotia. Being a business owner is not easy. It is hard work, but you would have to do no other way because you love it. And as I've said before, I became involved in politics because I wanted to be a voice for small businesses, and that it has been a privilege to be that voice. One area I'd like to bring attention to the Office of Regulatory Affairs and Service Effectiveness, an initiative undertaken by our Premier and led by Fred Crooks and his team. This office is tasked with identifying and implementing red tape. Fred's team has been done an amazing job of looking at policies and dramatically affect businesses in Nova Scotia. and adjusting these policies so that businesses will have a stronger platform from them which to succeed. And my fellow members have not accessed this department, I would encourage you to do so, as you can help the business owners in your communities. But red tape reduction does not solely live with the provincial government. It also sits with municipalities, and I'm happy to say that Halifax has hired a full-time staff member to work on municipal red tape issues. It is to my hope that they will deal with encroachment rules, as all business owners have to pay a fee to have their business signage hang off their building over Halifax airspace. A small business already pays some of the highest commercial taxes in Nova Scotia. Commercial taxes have been a real burden for small businesses in Halifax, and I know that I have worked very hard on this issue. And I am happy to report that we've developed a solution that will enable municipalities to create different tax zones. These zones will allow municipalities to give tax relief to small businesses around the municipalities, and I am confident that Halifax Council will work with business districts to ensure that small businesses will continue to thrive in Halifax and all around Nova Scotia. And another amazing program that has helped businesses in Nova Scotia is the Graduate to Opportunities program. With this program, businesses are encouraged to hire recent graduates, and government will pay 25% of their first year's salary, and the second year's salary will be 12.5%. This program is helping young Nova Scotians find jobs here at home, and to date, 200 graduates have participated in this program, which demonstrates that this program is working. And I spoke to one of those businesses in my riding the other day, a tech company called QRA, who has taken advantage of this program, and we are happy and excited about this program. It has helped them hire young graduates who are staying in Nova Scotia. With that, Mr. Speaker, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge my amazing kids and thank them for letting me play a part in shaping Nova Scotia for the future. As we are so good at recognizing people in our constituents, I want to take the opportunity to recognize my kids and some of their accomplishments. First, I want to recognize my oldest, Annika, for her incredible passion for dance and her inspiring dedication for putting in 12 hours a week with Halifax Dance. Annika is a beautiful and an amazing dancer. She has worked hard and has earned a role in the Nutcracker this year. So this year on opening night, Mr. Speaker, I can assure you I will be there to watch her dance and be that proud dad in the audience. And if that's not enough dancing in 1 week, Annika's dedication extends for sharing her passion for dance with kids who may not have the physical ability. She dedicates 2 hours every week as a volunteer with the All-Inclusive Movement program at Halifax Dance. All of this on top of her hard work in school. As you can see, Mr. Speaker, I am proud of my amazing daughter, Annika. Now I want to speak to you about my other incredible daughter, Sophia, Mr. Speaker. You have to understand, she is payback times 2 for everything that I've ever done to my parents. And one of her greatest passions is climbing. And I can tell you, she will climb anything and everything. And she is able to climb between V4 and V6, and I'm sure most of you will not understand what that is, but let me assure you, the majority of these people in the room would not be able to do that, including me. But what I really want to share is her accomplishment for climbing a 1,000-foot rock face in North Conway called Whitehorse earlier this month. She and I and our guide started out from Janet from Cathedral Mountain Guide, set out at 9 a.m. and started climbing. It took us a total of 5.5 hours to complete. And I have to say, sitting at 600 feet off the deck, eating lunch with my daughter, legs hanging over the edge, and looking at all the fall colors is a memory that I will never forget. I was filled with pride when she found the courage to keep climbing, even through moments of fear and tears. This shows that she has the inner strength to accomplish anything, and I could not be more proud, and I look forward to the next climbing that we do together. Mr. Speaker, I also want to thank my wife, April. As all you know, our spouses play a huge role in our success to represent our ridings. When your name is on a ballot, their name is on a ballot, just by association. So when you take the lumps, they take the lumps. When you win, they win. They are an integral part of success. They may have not signed up to be a politician's spouse, but they stand next to us through rough times and the happy times. So to my wife, thank you from the bottom of my heart for standing next to me. As you stand next to me as we embark in the next chapter of this adventure together. Mr. Speaker, I hope that it was clear how proud I am of representing this government and proud of the hard work that this government has done. I am also very honored to serve alongside the Premier. With that, I want to bring my remarks to an end by saying thank you to all my constituents for giving me the great honor of representing Halifax-Chebucto. Halifax-Chebucto is my home. It's a community of communities that I am proud to serve. It is more than just a place where I can put my name on the ballot when election time is called. I will ask my voters once again for their support. I will do so with pride. I will be asking my friends, my neighbors, for their support. Mr. Speaker, I will do this as a lifelong member of this community. I did not choose where to run because I thought where I could win. I ran in Halifax-Chebucto because I love this community. I have always lived here. I am raising my family here. I run my business here. And when I chose to run, I chose my community, Mr. Speaker. I will face an opponent who chose to run in Halifax-Chebucto, not because he's from here, not because he has roots here, not because he cares about this community, and an opponent who has chosen Halifax-Chebucto because it looked great on a spreadsheet. So with that, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the privilege of addressing my constituents and sharing with them all the hard work I have been doing on their behalf in Halifax-Chebucto.